Hey, thank you so much for clicking this video. I'm Matthew Msengate, the designer and developer. This is my YouTube channel, Coded Design, where I teach coding and user interface design. If you are new to my channel, please consider looking at other playlists and other informational playlists that I have. As you can see here, I've got a couple of playlists that might help you to improve your web design and development skills. I've got CSS courses, jQuery for beginners, I've got CorelDRAW for beginners, someone who wants to also learn graphic design, the front end aspect of web development. I've got also some PHP projects. So if you are still new, please consider subscribing. So I am busy trying to unpack and some sort of explain in details this system that I'm busy developing. It's called Secular. So at the moment I'm behind the scene. If maybe you want to see practically what it can do and what it is, please consider checking the playlist in my channel. So we are here behind the scene. In the previous video I've explained the importance of a single point of access, meaning that all requests from the user interface or from the URL or any application whatsoever, they must be some sort of routed to index, so that the index can act as a security gate, so a security guy at the gate controlling the access. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about my indexed PHP, and I'm not going to get into other details to avoid the confusion. So one might ask how it is that I only got 11 lines of code in this index.php, but the system does a lot of things. It also sends some email for verification and all those things. So this number one, the reason why I've got few lines here, number one, that has been pushed or motivated by a clean code. You must avoid having a lot of code, more especially if it's an unnecessary code. So you must have a certain way of writing your code such that it's clean and meaningful. And number two, when we talk of clean code, obviously that is some sort of it depends, it varies from person to person what they mean about clean code. But to me, when I'm talking about clean code, I mean number one, a code that is easy to read, and number two, a little bit clean. So obviously it's not easy for a code to be clean, because you have to write sometimes multiple lines of code in one place or whatever. But you must always push for minimizing the lines of code, or always refactor and clean your code. Okay. And also again, the other thing why this is a some sort of only few lines, but the system does a lot of things, it's the solid principle, the S in the solid principle, single responsibility. What does the index PHP or the entrance of my application does? It only does like one thing, or it has got a single responsibility, not necessarily doing one thing, but there is what is responsible for. So it sticks to its scope of functionality. It's not doing a lot of things. Okay, so that is S in solid principle, which is single responsibility. Bob, Mr. Bob, or Uncle Bob, a guy that I believe he was well known in the software development industry, and I believe also he's the one who came up, he's the some sort of an engineer behind the solid principle, the well standard good programming practice solid principle. He says that he explains single responsibility as your class or object or function must have only one reason to change. So that's the other way of looking at it, because when you are saying a single responsibility, one might think like it must do one thing, meaning that it's just one line of instruction. So it might be a group of instruction when you're applying the single responsibility principle, but your class has one reason to change. For instance, the reason that it might change always revolves around a certain task. For instance, when let's talk about this index.php particularly. As you can see, what it does, it includes a an autoloader, and also it creates a new dependency container, which is main di container, and it creates an application. So it's more like it's bootstrapping. It's like it's preparing the whole system, getting things ready. Maybe if we can give this this process one word, we will say it's bootstrapping, or like some sort of warming up. So as you can see, I can't put a code that has got nothing to do with warming up, with preparing the system. So that's why Angle Bob says it must have one reason to change. So let's say if I have a code that deals with CSS in this in this file, obviously you can see, it's easy to see that that code that will be dealing with CSS somewhere here has got nothing to do with bootstrapping or warming up or getting the engine of my application ready. So that is it, guys. So let me just quickly tell you what's going on in terms of the code line by line. Here I'm just opening a PHP tag, nothing much, and then on line 4 I am including a class called autoload. What autoload does, autoload enables me to always create new objects that are some sort of classes that are part of my system without adding the word include. Okay, in PHP, when you want to use this file, for instance, let's say, let me just go to this file, main dependency injection container. In my classes, di containers, dependency injection containers, here is it. If I want to use this file, I must always include it, like include, then I must specify the path to this file, philantro classes di container, then di what.php, for instance, something like this. In the end, there will be parent path, then in the end I will have something like this. So I will be including it because I can't use a file that this script is not aware of. But because of there is the help of the autoload class that I have created, we will talk about it later, I am able to just create new instances, and also be advised that this is object-oriented programming. So I'm able to create new objects without having to always include. As you can see here, I'm just including the only file that helps me with including. So meaning that after this file, I will include for a different reason, but not for the sake of including every time. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm including an autoloader, and here I'm creating a new object. This is a variable. I'm creating a new object of main di container. What is a dependency injection container? A dependency injection container, it's a container that helps me with this one is helping me with auto loading things. The di container helps me with creating objects. Why must I have a container that will create objects for me? Let me just give you a quick example. Okay, let's say I want to create a new philantro. At the moment, don't mind about what these objects are. Okay, so I want to create a new object of philantro. Let's say I'm creating it here. Okay, let's say variable philantro is equal to new philantro. Okay, then open and close, and that's it. Okay, save. There's a line there. What does that mean? Okay, let's check there. Missing arguments. Okay, missing arguments, database credential for the constructor. Okay, so that means before I call this class philantro, I must pass some sort of arguments, database credentials. Okay, I must pass database credentials. So what does that mean? This means that before I call this class, I have to And also be advised that this is a wrong variable. I'm just typing it for the sake of illustration. So this means that I have to create some sort of, or to organize, because those database credentials, it's an array. So I have to organize the database credentials here before. Okay, let's go back to what we talked about, single responsibility. As you can see that creating these objects calls for this dependency to be instantiated, or to be initialized, or to be declared. Okay, it calls for this to be declared. What if maybe this was an object just like this one? When I'm instantiating it, or when I'm some sort of declaring it, it wants me to declare also another dependency. It will mean that before I use it, I must create another dependency, dependency number 2. Dependency number 2, let's say it needs like 4 dependencies. Then I will go on to create another dependency 4, dependency 3, dependency, and then you'll find that these dependencies has got also another dependency. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So it means that creating an object doesn't necessarily, or in most cases, end on creating object. Some objects, they will need other object as dependency. A brief explanation about what a dependency is. A dependency is, it's any external variable or external content or functionality that the object uses in order to extend its own functionality or to complete its own task. Philantro must take database credentials, because Philantro, it's a class that deals with connecting to the database. So if it's going to connect to the database, then it means that it must know a thing or two about the database name and all those things. As you can see here, I'm connecting to my backend, to the server. So this class must know a thing or two, or it must know about the database name, the data, where it is connecting, and also the credentials. So as you can see here, without the dependency injection container, it will mean that okay, I have to pause the video now. There's some minor disturbance. I will be back now. Just pause the video. Okay, I'm back. My apologies for that disturbance. So as you can see, without a dependency injection container, it will mean that number 1, we will violate the single responsibility principle. That means my index as a gatekeeper, now it will be responsible for creating other objects, of which that's a problem. So as you can see, we've decided to outsource that responsibility to the dependency injection container. So let's just quickly jump to the DI class so that we can see how it achieves this. So before we create a new Philantro, to start with, Philantro, it's a singleton. I will explain that later. That's why we don't have new here. But that singleton, it needs a dependency, which is database credentials, and we are getting that from a class called app variables. Okay, then we pass that in. As you can see, before it returns Philantro, it first organizes everything that it will need. Let's just also check database, get database. Okay, and not quotation instance. Okay, let me just scroll up. I want, let's say this is get database. Okay, as you can see, when we are getting the database here, if you want the database, this class, the dependency injection container, create a new instance of a database, and also it passes the dependencies. So this class database needs Philantro. I'm sorry about this. This class database needs Philantro, as you can see, but Philantro on its own needs something. So this class will be responsible for all of that chain of dependencies that are needed. For instance, you don't just create a new database. The database will need Philantro as a dependency. Then when you go to get Philantro, let's quickly go to the definition of this. Go to definition. Okay, When you go to get Philantro, as you can see, before you get Philantro, you also need another dependency. So this dependency injection container, it's one of the well-known standard and good programming practices. So it means that you are just outsourcing the process of creating dependencies to one class, so that you can write a clean and also easy to understand code. So that was it for the dependency injection container. And then here I'm just creating a new class, and then I'm passing a new router. The router is the one that needs the DI container, and then from there, this was just testing for this tutorial, so I don't need it here. And then that's it. That is it for my index. I hope you are learning something or a thing or two in this tutorial, and also be advised or be notified that if you are a beginner, this might not make sense to you, because this is object oriented, and also it's not at the beginner's level. It's a little bit complex. We all started from somewhere. So in my case, when I was starting, when things were complicated, I always watched the video over and over and over again until I understood what the lecturer or the teacher was trying to say. So this might not be meaningful at the moment, and also you might feel like you are needing some simple stuff. Let me give you a piece of advice: watch the videos over and over again, so that you can get the concept, because in the end, or when you are working for a company, you will be required to do a production code, not a code for the sake of learning. At some point you will have to face and meet object oriented programming, and also these are best practices and also design patterns will be needed at some point. So it will be better if you can familiarize yourself with them as early as possible. Otherwise, I'm Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. Thank you so much for clicking this video. If you haven't subscribed and you want to learn more about PHP skills on another level, please do me a favor and subscribe. See you on the next one.